To all you people who've been complaining that electric cars are too expensive, I have a treat for you today. It's a car which is actually cheaper than a Kia Picanto. Has an all-electric 165-mile range, and you might not have heard of the brand, but it comes from one of the world's biggest car companies. This is the Leapmotor T03, and it costs £15,995. I really hope it's good. Okay, let's deal with the Leapmotor bit first. It's a Chinese company which has climbed into bed with Stellantis, the global behemoth which owns Vauxhall, Citroen, Peugeot and Fiat. The first T03s will be built in China, but they're soon expected to come from a Fiat factory in Poland, which will keep the tariffs and shipping costs lower. They'll be sold through a network of 50 dealers in the UK, normally alongside other Stellantis cars. The T03 is one of two cars they're launching in the UK, along with the more predictable large electric SUV called the C10. If you want to see a review of that, then please subscribe to the channel and maybe give us a like while you're there. Ta. The first thing you notice about the little Leapmotor is the size. It's tiny. It's about 3.6 metres long and 1.6 metres wide, which means it's actually smaller than a Dacia Spring, although it's a little bit taller. Do you think it's got some looks from other cars? I can't help thinking it looks a bit like an old Hatsu, or maybe the last Smart 4.4. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you go around to the front, there's a distinctly cute look about it. Look, it's got a little face and a little nose where the charging flap is. With all this personality in the looks, it makes it strange that it's got a name like Leapmotor T03, which sounds like a paper size or an airport terminal. I can only imagine they kind of saved money by, instead of going to an expensive marketing agency, just named it after the room where they had the meeting. I think this car needs a nickname, so if you've got any ideas, let me know in the comments. While we were looking at the cute face, you might notice the charging port is at the front here. Personally, I love that, as it means you're always near a plug if you drive nose into a parking space, but I know some people hate it, including insurance companies who have to fix it after a bump. Talking of charging, the T03 has a 37.3 kilowatt hour battery. That doesn't sound huge, but it's bigger than the Springs. Actually, it's more than the old Mini and the Mazda MX-30 too. It gives 165 miles of range in the official cycle, which is pretty usable. Recharging is a little bit leisurely though. Even on a home wall box, it'll only take 6.6 kilowatts rather than the usual 7.2. And if you find a rapid charger, it will take 45 kilowatts, which doesn't sound great, but it is better than the Spring, which can only match 30 kilowatts. Ooh, that doesn't sound great, does it? And look at these panel gaps. I suppose you can't complain at the price though. If we're going to get the bad stuff out of the way first, no rear wiper. I mean, come on guys, please, can I have a rear wiper? Then when you open the boot, first of all, look how narrow that opening is. It's going to make it tricky to get anything particularly big in there. Not that you will be able to get anything big in there, because the boot is just 210 litres big. Now a Dacia Spring, for example, has 50% more space than that, and even something like a Volkswagen e-Up has another 10 or 20 litres on top of this. On the plus side, the seat folds down with pulling just one handle, and you are going to need to fold the seats down if you do more than say 4 ready meals on your weekly shop. Also, I'm 5'8", which is bang on average size apparently, but if you're any taller, you're going to crack your head on this lid, I think. Also, no parcel shelf. Let's see if I fit inside. I have to say, the rear seat passengers do a bit better than the luggage in terms of space. I mean, headroom especially. There's loads of headroom here. Okay, this is my driving position and there's knees brushing against there, but if I move them in the middle, it's not too bad, and there's room for my feet underneath the seat too. It's also quite nice and light and airy in here, and I get my own electric window switch and some nice metallic feeling door handles. For the price and the size, I'm quite impressed. I know what you're thinking this is quite posh, so this must be the top spec version which costs 18.5 grand or something, but no, there is only one trim level that you can buy of this car, and this is it, and you do get all this kit. There's 2 digital screens, including this one in front of me and this one here, which are nice, decent resolution. Also 4 electric windows, electric heated mirrors, and the bits that you touch most of the time have a nice quality feel to them. This steering wheel has a sort of fake leather covering on it, which is very nice. The switches all feel really solid. There are some nice squishy bits, and these stalks here, I think I last saw these on a Tesla. They've got a nice metallic feel to them here, and they just have that sort of quality feel that you don't get in other cars. Also, keyless go, start stop button there. We can even use your phone's Bluetooth to get into the car if you don't want to have to carry a key in your pocket. Then there's this nice cup holder, and look, there's a little space there to put your phone. You don't get wireless charging at this price level, and USB-A, which is a bit old school. I'm sure they can change that. One thing I don't like, the passenger door handle is piano black, and I'm sure that's just going to scratch and get covered in fingerprints quite quickly. Also, you can see these cameras here, which are part of the whole safety system where it keeps an eye on you. But the blanking plate on the other side has this funny little character who looks like a kind of ninja blob. Perhaps you know who he is. Please let us know in the comments. Other thing, this sunroof. I mean, it's huge. Panoramic roof with its own electric blind, so you can keep the sun out in the summer, so the air conditioning doesn't have to work too hard. Now, that's very nice, and it probably gives you a bit of headroom, I suppose. But I'd happily give up that sunroof for a rear wiper. While the screens are big and the graphics are quite nice, there's no CarPlay. And also, the nav is a bit laggy and baffling to use, as is the ventilation actually. On the minus side, the warranty is only 3 years long. Now that's the same as the Dacia Spring, but things like the Hyundai Insta should get 5 years. There's only one trim level, so the only choice is the colour, and there are only 3 of those. There's a light white, what they call a starry silver, and this kind of glacier blue, which is kind of powdery and pastel-y. Among all the computerised safety stuff, there's also 6 airbags if the worst should happen. And there's lots of high strength steel about, so they're pretty confident they're going to do well in the independent NCAP crash tests. Now, a car of this size, its natural environment is going to be in the city, and we've been driving through some Italian towns, and it's brilliant. It's just the right size, it's remarkably perky, and it even rides quite well over urban potholes and speed bumps. But even when you get out on the open road, it feels remarkably competent too. It's got 94 horsepower compared to the most powerful Dacia Spring's 63, so that's quite a difference. And at motorway speeds, it's perfectly happy. The only thing I would say is that when you are driving around town, you'll notice a noise from the motors, and I think it's from the warning system that sounds like a kind of a wail from a ghost. It's like a tortured soul's trapped under the bonnet. The other thing is when you get up to a certain speed on a motorway or an open A road, there's a bit of wind whistle around from the mirrors and also probably from those huge panel gaps. Something that's quite odd is this car has 3 driving modes. That's not strange, but it also has 3 different steering settings. Now you can adjust them all on the screen here, but if you do look down there rather than straight ahead, the safety systems will tell you off, so it's better to do it when you're stationary. Now normally I just put things in normal or standard and leave them at that, but it's not quite as nice than that. It doesn't feel quite as fun, so I put it in sport, and the steering's nicely weighted and it's got a good throttle response too. It's really quite good fun in this setting. There's no choice on the regen braking though. It naturally has some regen braking, but you can't adjust it. The brakes are strong too. It's got discs on the back, which is quite rare on a car of this price and performance. The T03 has 15-inch alloys as standard, which again is great for the price. Most other cars like the Spring have steels. The tyres are quite narrow though, and on this example they're made by a company called Westlake, which doesn't give me an awful lot of hope in the quality, but they do seem to hold the road quite well and they're not too noisy. In terms of visibility, you can't really see the nose of the car, which isn't a great problem because it's not big, but for parking it might be handier. There's one big single wiper which does a decent job. The mirrors are big enough and of course electrically adjustable. The back window's not huge, and again no wiper, but you sit quite low down. You feel quite safe as though you're being protected by these high doors here. The steering wheel is nice to hold, but it only adjusts up and down. There's no in and out adjustment. Now perhaps I'm being too fussy at a car at this price level, but it does mean it feels a little bit odd for where I like my steering wheel. but also it blocks out the left-hand side of this screen here. Now, in this car, that's the navigation, so I have to kind of lean over when I want to see where I need to go. Now, maybe on right-hand drive cars, it'll be perfect and I can see all of the screen, but it is a little strange. As you'd expect on a modern car, it's got all the safety systems, but there are a couple of features which you wouldn't expect on a car in this price range. For example, there's a warning if you're about to open the door and there's a cyclist or a car passing close by, and also a blind spot warning system. You get adaptive cruise control, which you certainly wouldn't expect on a budget car like this. The Leapmotor T03 might look like an old smart and sound a bit like a car park level, but it's a really together complete car. It's got a decent range, it's got good performance both in and out of town, and of course there's that price. Apart from the exceptional price, it's got a great level of equipment, it's more powerful than all its key rivals, and it's got amazing efficiency. I've just looked at what the efficiency is and it's saying it's doing 10 miles per kilowatt hour. Now I had to check that twice because that's astonishing. It's basically twice what I've got in any other car, but that's right. I suppose it's a nice temperature, we've been doing a lot of driving around town, but that's still exceptional efficiency. It'll be really interesting when we get this in the UK with a Dacia Spring and a Hyundai Insta and maybe a BYD Seagull too. Or maybe you'd rather nip over to the electrifying.com used car pages and pick yourself up a nice Corsa electric that's like a year old, or maybe a Fiat 500e that's done a few thousand miles. They'll be about the same price. Which would you prefer? Let us know in the comments as always.